It's a lot warmer here than it was in Iowa. Listen, I'm a congressman from Kentucky, and, I got elected in 2012, the same year as Ron DeSantis got elected. We were elected together to Congress, and I took some controversial votes, and I got a lot of bad press, and my mom was worried about me there in Congress, and she said, "Are you making any friends?" And I said, "Mom, they have a 9% approval rating. You wouldn't make friends with these people either." But I did find one friend. I found somebody there in Congress that had two things that you never find together in Congress. He had a brain and he had common sense. His name was Ron DeSantis. So instead of, a lot of people up there like to go to the champagne, cocktail hour and put on the tuxedos. We go out and have a hamburger and read the bills that we had to vote on, right? Because we figured that's our job. Well, my litmus test for politicians, before I became one, was to ask them what they thought about the Second Amendment. Because I thought, this will be a litmus test for the rest of the Constitution. And if they would say something about duck hunting, I'm not voting for that person. They don't understand what the Constitution is about. It's about putting the power in the hands of the people, not of the government. Our rights come from God, not from the government. It's not even close. Ron DeSantis is the most pro-Second Amendment candidate in this race by far. But that's not my litmus test anymore. And I want to tell you how I test politicians, whether I give them my support or not. 3 years ago, a new virus was introduced into our society. And most of the politicians and leaders lost their ever-loving minds. Okay? They told me during the 15 days to slow the spread, they were going to pass a $2 trillion spending bill, but they were going to do it on unanimous consent. They said, it's too dangerous for Congress to show up for work. You all just stay home, and we'll pass it by unanimous consent. Nobody needs to be in the chamber as long as nobody objects. And I thought, hold on a second. The nurses are still working during COVID. The grocery store bagger is still carrying the groceries out to your car. We got farmers are still working, truckers are still working. I told Congress, I got in my car and I drove 8 hours and I objected. I said, get your butts to work. Come here to Washington, D.C. Go on the record. Well, you're clapping, but none of them were. There were 434 people hated me for breathing air. CNN called me the most hated person in Washington, D.C. That's the only time you all got the news correct, okay? I was the most hated person. Nancy Pelosi called me a dangerous nuisance. I think we need more dangerous nuisances than Nancy Pelosi. Ron DeSantis would be that dangerous nuisance to the liberal agenda in Washington, D.C. So, I'm being hated by everybody, but I'm pointing out what's in the bill. I said this will cause inflation. This will cause shortages if you pay people not to work. If you give this money to the states, the blue states will keep the economy shut down forever with this money. This is a horrible idea. And oh, by the way, it funded the mail-in election of 2020. So I was they drug everybody back from all over the country. They were hating me. And I'm sitting there ready to make my motion on the floor of the House of Representatives, and my phone rings. And I looked at it, and it was like this weird number with a bunch of zeros in it. Like, who could get a phone number that's all zeros? Oh, that's Trump. So I let it go to voicemail. He did not leave me a voicemail. But he called again, and he called again. But I couldn't leave the floor of the House. I had to make that motion to object because nobody else was going to do it. So I caught a little time because they were going to debate this bill because I forced them to debate it. And I walked out and I called the president back. And he came on the phone and he said, I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before have you seen the way in which I will come at you. I'm more popular than you and you know it. I'm backing your primary opponent and you're gonna lose. So, and then he proceeded to scream at me for quite some time while I tried to talk about the Constitution. That I was like being on listen-only mode on the conference call. And then he hung up on me, and I went back to my seat. He tweeted that I should be thrown out of the GOP. He said I was a third-rate grandstander. Come on, folks, I'm at least second-rate, don't you think? And it was a very lonely moment. And I thought, I probably will lose my next election in 8 weeks. I had a primary. But after this blew over, and still I had no friends, I got a call from an old friend who I used to serve with in Congress, the guy I got elected with. But he was a governor, and his name was Ron DeSantis. I still have my number. And he called me up, and he said, "You are doing the right thing. Don't let them get you down. I see they're hating you. Everybody's hating you. Republicans, Democrats, the president, the press." He said, "The same thing is happening to me here in Florida. Because I will not shut down our schools. I will not shut down our small businesses. I will not wreck this economy. I will not deprive our children of an education. I will drag this country back out of lockdown." And he said, "I know it could cost me my next election. They're saying I'll never recover from this." He said, "I don't care. It is the right thing to do. And in 2 years, they will see that we were correct, that you were correct, Thomas, and that I was correct in Florida." So he said, "Keep the faith, keep doing what you're doing." And I thought to myself, here's a politician looking 2 years in advance. Most of my colleagues can't think past lunchtime. So it was at that moment, that's my new litmus test. Where were you during COVID? Were you empowering Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx to go around and shut down our economies in every state? Were you pushing for the $1,200 checks? That was for the cheese in the trap, folks. The mice never figure out why the cheese is free, right? That most of that money was going to Wall Street and to the bankers. Where were you during COVID? Or were you AWOL? Were you doing nothing? Were you just staying at home as a politician? There's only one person in this race who passes that litmus test. The biggest test of freedom and liberty in our lifetimes. And he passed it with flying colors. That's Governor Ron DeSantis. It's my honor now to introduce another guy with a brain and with common sense in Washington, D.C. He's from Texas. He's 100 miles from the border. And he understands what is happening to this country. The fact that Joe Biden is leaving this border wide open. And he's helping us craft policy. He knows everything about what we need to do to secure our border. And it's Congressman Chip Roy from Texas.